Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the whole meeting this morning. Appreciate everybody here. It's all online. People coming to the gallery to join us this morning. Don't have a lot out here, but I want to kind of keep it that way so we can get into the discussion on the external administrative and no business. With that, I call this meeting to order, and we'll have a roll call by Madam Clerk Fetty.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners.
Morning.
Commissioner Goodchild,
Here.
Commissioner Bardwell,
Here.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Here.
Commissioner Lutz,
Here.
Commissioner Cook.
Here.
You have a quorum. You may proceed.
Thank you much for that. Anybody? Oh.
Man, that was fast.
I'm just getting warmed up here. I can feel it today. Okay, everybody been gavelled, so only gavel once around. Okay, moving on. Does anybody got anything to do want to put on here this morning? Here, now we can move right into the Michigan State University Extension Agreement Review. Carol, you want to address the board anything on this review? We kind of looked at it, and
Thanks. Yeah, I'm not sure. I just listened to the recording from the last meeting and there was some discussion of revisiting and reviewing the current MOA. So I emailed it to you all last week and so I don't know if you have any questions.
well, it's like Commissioner Barrow, so we got EDC wants to move over to the MSU building. And I'm just giving my personal opinion on we can weigh in on this, but I don't see an issue with that. So let's agree with. The next question is they want to do some remodeling. And with your help, and they've got some outside people that are helping. Do we need to take this through county procedure? That's the next question. I don't know if we do or don't. I don't think maybe we do. Maybe you guys can just do what you got to do. Maybe Mike can just kind of be the final overseer, maybe, but instead of throwing out, that's the question to the board. I mean, what's worth it? Because I think it's not costing us nothing. It's being handled by, like I said, MSU and EDC.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the board's feelings?
Well, Chair, you and I just had a brief discussion. After I thought, addressing the board, I thought about, this is the first time that I can ever remember, and Claire's sitting back there as well, but I can never remember we've been, had a proposal request that cost us zero. Usually, well, for bids when we have to get the lowest price and we have to approve the funding. In this particular case, because MSU is going to use some of the millage money, we're not talking about a lot of money. I think it's probably going to be under $10,000 total for the whole project. Maybe that's an extreme amount. Well, I'm not sure. But in any event, that is funded, materials is funded, and also there's been the money in terms of the labor of the remodel has been funded by someone from the outside, someone that's unnamed, and at least to my knowledge at this point. So here you have two axioms. One that MSU is going to use their millage money for a bit of remodel, which they've been thinking about for quite a long time. It's nothing new. But on the other hand, they have some space the EDC can fit in there, and someone from the outside who's very pro economic development has said that they would cover the cost of the labor. So with that said, I don't know of any provision in our policies that would cover this in terms of bidding, but I'm open for discussion in the sense that it doesn't meet the criteria, any of our normal criteria. So other than, as the chair said, oversight by the director, going to grounds director, I don't see an obstacle to moving forward. So I want to lay that out on the table, Chair, just from our quick conversation and thinking, and for the board's thoughts.
I don't have an issue with it.
In our county policy, I'm just asking, does it say they have to be put out for bid for a county building?
Well, I think there's a figure in there too. Mike, is there a figure in there that was under a certain area does not have to?
Up to $2,000, that's required.
Up to $2,000. And that was where I was discussing too with Commissioner Barlow, is, yeah, it is a county building, but, this is different than what we're used to. We've never had, because I don't see how we have to prove the lowest bidder, whatever. It's not costing us any money. I don't think anybody can argue the fact that we just allowed them to do it like we were talking.
Well, let's take it a step further, Chair, to answer that question. Let's say the board decided to take it up for bid. How are you going to award that? If you take it up for a bid, you're going to be obligated to award it to the lowest bidder. Well, the lowest bidder may or may not be, is MSU going to put a bid in, or this other person, the combined bid? Probably not. So you're really obligated, that the county would be obligated some type of funding. All right, let's look at another side. What would be the argument for someone who said that was unfair and unjustified and could have done it? Pretty weak argument, I would think, and I'm not an attorney, but just think about it. It's sort of self-funded. County's not spending any money.
I was just
How would you argue?
about our policy. I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know how the policy
Well,
was.
that's why we're here, because, we were all thinking the same thing, there's county policy that we want to follow, but after looking at the contract and where the money's coming from and this and that, my personal opinion, I have no issue with moving forward with what the original plans were. My personal opinion, I don't know if we need a motion to that effect.
I would think we'd want something on Thursday, and that it would include the director of building and grounds and have oversight in terms of whatever you would.
Can I say something?
Yes, I would appreciate that, because I'm stumbling for words for what you would add.
I know you've said that it's not going to cost the county any money, but we don't know what they're doing. Obviously, they're going to require computers and phones. Have they talked to Ian? Who's going to run all the data cable? I mean, I would think, my opinion is, before the board approves it, it should see what the design's going to be and how is the air conditioning and the heating going to be handled, electrical. I mean, they should have a plan, because they're going to have to submit something to building codes. But not only myself, but Ian should be consulted just for data and telephones. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm assuming that Ian handles that in that building. Maybe it's the state, but I would think that the board might want to see at least a sketch of what they're going to approve them to do. And yet definitely the board should have the ability to say yes or no to that design, because whatever they do, not that this is probably likely going to happen, but should those people vacate, then we're left to deal with what's left behind if we need to do something to change it. So that's my opinion. I think we should see at least a rough sketch of what they plan on remodeling and how they plan on doing it, and that myself and Ian are consulted before they move forward.
Mike, did you see this? What they brought?
It was a sketch.
I mean, it looks fine. I mean, I don't have an issue with it. Again, as long as they follow all the building codes, that'll protect the county, make sure they have their permits and everything. But as long as I'm consulted with and Ian's consulted with, and they follow building codes, I think that we should be fine.
Because they gotta change any structural walls or solid levels.
No, all that stuff in there now is just partitions. They don't go to the ceiling. So I don't know if these are going to go to the ceiling. If they do, then that's going to affect the air conditioning and the heating in that building. So obviously we'll have those discussions,
Yeah.
but I'm glad there's at least a sketch. So,
Well, that's the point let's take it too, man. It's a good point. All of that.
thank you.
No, so you can keep it.
Carl, did you respond to anything that we said about computers, phones, or anything else that's been discussed, or?
Maybe Ian would be able to speak to this a little bit better, but how I understand it, the county gets internet to the building and then MSU IT works then to connect our network to the internet connection.
That's true.
It's like ultra layman's terms, but I'm learning a lot in this role. But so since the connection is already there, the EDC would just, I would think, connect to the county's server. No,
No.
I don't know. So he would be able to speak to that better. We have like our MSU network that the EDC will not connect to, but there's,
They'll have their own. But what Mr. Miller was talking about is specifically if we're gonna create partitions, there has to be plugs in the wall for internet, and those have to be negotiated, worked out, where they're gonna connect, and the EDC has to bring their own internet connection. They will, unless the board wants them to connect to us, which they have never done in the past. Also, we provide phones for MSU, and we've never provided them for EDC in the past, which is not a problem. We're already ready to do that. But licensing cost goes up for us. We want to incur that for the EDC. We've never done that in the past. So something to consider.
So this right here, it's not costing us nothing. We just find out it's probably the cost of
Well, it's a good point, Ian, and I'm just a bit surprised that we're this far. No one's thought of this until this morning to approach either Mike or Ian on this. I think, I'm backtracking now in a sense that unless there's a plan for the internet and HVAC, if HVAC is going to be affected, I don't know where the ducks are. And the connectivity, that should be addressed first, I would think. Would you not? I mean, I would think that just so we have a scope, the board would have a scope in terms of what is this going to take and how much extra. And when it came into the EDC with the phone connection and their own internet connection, that has to be in there as well. I mean, that should be a separate, that's what they should, I would think, unless the board decides otherwise, fund that themselves. But that's up to the board.
Chairman. So Carly, what are they doing now over there? Aren't they there now?
the EDC?
Yeah.
No. The new director is supposed to start today. So, I mean, we have the empty office spaces and she can come and work there if she's got, she can hook to our Wi-Fi or guest Wi-Fi if she needs to, but other than that, it's just a space. Would also just add, it seems like the estimate was pretty reasonable. So if we could continue with some more work in the building, so, the EDC will just have the two spaces on the, whatever side, the right side of the building there. But to create some continuity throughout the office space, I would like to perhaps add on a little bit more. There's one office on the other side of the building that's also just partitions. So if it's possible to build up walls and put a door onto that, as well as just put the, I don't know if you've seen what Jim wants to do for like a chair rail and some wood paneling and stuff. But at least if we could put that cosmetically on the other side of the wall, so it's all kind of the same look and feel and consistent throughout. We would pay for that, obviously. But I'd just like to explore that option if we're going to do it anyway. If you approve it, of course.
Jim, I'm going to back up again. After rethinking some of this again, since it's on the fly. If this project with the phone system and the internet does not cost the county any money, okay, I still hold to my original thought in terms of it wouldn't have to be bid out and there's no reason to. But if EDC is going to pick up their costs MSU is gonna pick up their additional costs, whether it be HVAC, whatever they decide amongst themselves, and it costs the county zero. And the county approves, the building ground director approves, the modifications. I still don't think it would have to go up for bid. But if it's gonna cost the county $1, that threshold, then that's a different story. And then, in the sense that the speediest process would be not to cost the county anything. At least in my mind, the board would have to prove that, but, on the other hand, and I'm assuming the EDC would pick up their own costs, and you would work that out with Jim Tussey.
Right.
And then let the board know as soon as you can what the agreements are, so they can evaluate, and might evaluate it further, and perhaps Thursday revisit it.
Yeah.
Or be
Mr. Chair, the EDC now are where they were. Did they pay for their phones and things there?
It's my understanding they have, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, they've always paid for their own phones, internet, and all that, the other stuff. And I think a little bit what Chris was saying too, I mean, if we have to spend money going and putting jacks and doing stuff like that, well, now you're getting into where it's costing us money, you know, if they pick up that, or if they get with the and find out exactly what they need or whatever, and MSU and EDC work out all the cost, I can sure with what.
No, I agree too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's, do a little more, maybe pass on and test or whatever, we could look at this on Thursday, and if we have to do something on Thursday to
Let's do it.
move forward, we can do that.
So just to be clear, what do you need me to do?
Well, it was like, I think, Commissioner Bartleson, you know, like Ben said, you know, there's gonna
Okay.
be, probably where internet's gonna go, where the jack's gotta go, if everything can be hooked up. And what the cost might be to it, and if the cost is covered by somebody else besides the county.
Okay,
Then, you know,
okay.
and you guys,
The goal of this agenda item to address the MOA for Michigan State University Extension. I would say we need to work into the new MOA, what exactly is going to happen with, and what's expected from EDC into this MOA from the county. So that's what I think all three of us need to work together to a new MOA for the board. And I'd like to appreciate Mike Miller for bringing this to my attention. This is the first hearing. I've never.
I said from the very beginning that we should involve the county, so.
that's why I got with this, Jim, you're jumping way ahead of yourself. You know, you gotta take some of the stuff to the board. You just gotta let them know what's going on here, because we have these other areas. So that's why we're here today, because they say, hey, wait a minute, you just can't start changing, go get people to do this and do that. You have to do that. So, okay, then,
Is that our directive, I'm guessing, from the board, is to create?
time to do more?
So that's where it gets a little confusing for me and a little complicated, because this MOA is with the county, which really shouldn't have anything to do with the EDC.
I think, Chairman, I think Carol makes an important point there, that when you said incorporate or integrate the EDC with MSU, I think they want, as I'm,
They don't want,
to be separate entities.
So if you want to have a separate MOA with EDC to occupy the space, and then I don't know if there's any updating we need to do, but we can explore that. But I think two separate ones, just so everything's very clear and.
And Chairman, I was noticing, I don't see it. And maybe you know this, Carly, there's a termination clause, but how's this renewed? Is it just until somebody terminated it? Was that the?
No, we renew it annually.
You do it?
Yeah. Yep. So every year, about October, November, when the budget's being finalized. Last year it was October 24th. Chairman Vaughn signed that, so.
Well, I'm reading it, and if anybody who else is reading it would point out that it's renewed annually, I'd appreciate that. It probably is renewed annually, but I don't see it where it should be in writing in the agreement. Could be under somewhere around the termination, term and termination. Okay, shall terminate on the last day of the
Last
county
day,
budget
yeah.
year 2025. I found it.
Okay.
So it's annual. Back to you, Chris.
So I guess board, taking what Ian said, what Drew said. Where are we going here then? Where are we saying, you want a separate thing with maybe EDC? That they're gonna occupy space in that building, because we don't want it, they're gonna MSU's building. We don't
I
want-
mean, it's your building
Well, you know what I'm
and per the MOA, you allow us
Yeah.
to occupy
You
it.
guys are occupiers, and we don't want to mud of the water there.
Yeah.
Who occupies that building?
Right.
You know, in your thoughts?
Where's the EDC? Plans are here.
I have no, I can't,
That's my thought.
it's your thought?
Well, they were
Yeah.
here last meeting. And
2 weeks ago.
maybe so, but normally you'd invite them if you're gonna have this type of discussion. How that didn't happen, I don't know. What I think should go forward, board and chair, is that these two, the MSU agreement is separate. I don't see any reason to change it unless you need a reason to change it till the end of the year, because it's the same thing for you as it is today, unless there's something you want to address. But on the EDC side, they should have their own agreement from the board that covers whatever it needs to be covered. And that should be what would be coming forward for the board. That would take care of the agreements and, you know, termination and renewal and anything the county provides, what they provide, the typical that you would put together, Mike, covering all that.
I think all we need from her is just plans.
Yeah.
Right, I think that's all we would need from you.
Well, and Jim has been handling that, so.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's what I was all saying from like, if MSU is gonna put money into the building or change the building, then we would need, hey, this is from the EDC and MSU, this is our plans. I guess you could submit that to us and we could approve them or deny them. And then what we need from EDC is an agreement upon like what they can and can't do in the building, what we will provide, what they'll provide. Right?
And carrying that step further, because Ron wants them out first of July, I think the chairman said that. Either private to me or in the board, but you are allowing the EDC to occupy a room in that building. And that is without remuneration? Or how does the board view that? It's your space. We
I
can't
mean,
be assigned, I'm reading this.
I appreciate that. And the way I look at it, it's your space. I mean, I appreciate you saying it's up to us. I don't know if legally that's accurate, but I mean, we have the space and, you know, we used to have a formal partnership and we know what they need. And so we're just trying to be good community partners.
Chairman, under the item 4, the assignment, just the agreement is non-assignable and non-transferable, but you're not assigning anything of what we established with the MOU with you to anyone. It's just that this is the first time that someone has an opportunity to occupy some space, which is a good cause, is it not? But how does the board view that? Is this going to be part of this 120,000 that we appropriate as we can yearly? Is this going to be a separate, or is it going to be separate? In other words, is it going to be free? those are the types of questions that have to be answered. Because it's the board, it's not you, basically.
Right.
You've got the space, if the board agrees, yeah, you can occupy the space until we forge an agreement, that's something. If not, that's within the board's approval as well, is it not?
Mhm.
Yeah. And I would recommend that you allow them to have space. At the present, since, unless there's any objections. But I put a limit on it for 30 days, or something. Move things along.
I think the EDC needs to come back here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fine with them using the space. It's just, they should be here too for this discussion, I feel like.
Well, why don't we have that on, if the
The
board
next-
approves on Thursday?
I mean, Director Miller brought up some good points there.
So the question, Chairman, that Carly has, what do you want me to do?
That's what I'm saying. Okay, we've done all this.
To
I
me,
guess-
it's between EDC and the board. We're willing to chip in and even a little extra to get the rest of the building up, to a working space. But I mean, other than that, it sounds like everything is between you and the EDC.
So let's bring the EDC back here
Okay.
after and do that one more discussion with them. Get some of these questions answered.
Chairman, I think in the meantime, though, if the EDC knows, or they need to start working on an agreement, separate agreement. I think that might be a good idea for them to start that. Just an idea.
I don't think it's a board level discussion. I think it's an internal discussion that we bring the solution to the board to approve.
Right.
I think
I think Commissioner Cook's right. I think we need to have something separate.
Yeah, just like Commissioner Bogwell said, I agree with you 100%.
So do you want this matter on Thursday's agenda if those discussions are able to be had, if not the soonest available?
If it's ready to put on Thursday.
Thursday, let's move forward Thursday, and if not, then we'll shoot for the next.
Yeah.
week of
Yeah.
Meetings, okay, thank you.
Does that, just clarity, is that more, does that consider more than just having Jim Tussey and Carly available? Is there some type of written documents that you're considering need to be presented as well?
As I have understood your discussion, I believe you're gonna be looking forward to some type of signed agreement and understanding with the EDC regarding the use of that space. That's how I interpreted your discussion.
That's,
As to
that's
what you
my
would be
feelings
looking
on it,
for.
but I'm just,
Well, when you say signed agreement.
Well, a
I
proposed,
hesitate with that, a proposal.
a
that the board can
proposed
approve.
agreement to be signed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree with that.
So I don't know that that can be ready by Thursday.
Do this.
But both
But,
parties could be here to answer further questions. Otherwise, we have this gap, if that's the board's.
I think
pleasure.
if Carly is a,
I am not. I'm gonna be
Okay.
at the Look Here Board of Commissioners meeting on
Okay.
Thursday morning.
Okay.
oh, it shows where we rate.
Poor Carly.
I can't do it today, but first thing, but third one.
so maybe we should shoot for July 14th or 17th?
Meanwhile, we're throwing it off that far. Then what's our directive to the EDC and what they want to do and MSU about doing the remodeling? I mean, we want it. They just don't hold till this is
Are
done.
either of those you're flexible? Okay. So maybe shoot for one of those days based on if the matter is ready for further discussion and the availability of Mr. Tussey on those 2 days.
Yeah, and Chairman, in that case, we should have a draft of a under MOU prior to that, so that's not new news to the board on that day. And that relative to questions can be asked based on that.
So,
Board's approval.
Chairman, so the question I have, what do we do between now and then for the EDC?
But that was my question.
Yeah.
to be. I know they're itching to get moving, to get settled. The quicker they get settled, the more, valuable they're gonna be to the community, of course, you know.
We could schedule even, a special building and grounds committee meeting, but I know all of your schedules this time of year, as well as everybody else's, is a little on the full side, so that might
Yeah.
prove to be challenging as well. Because how our meetings fall this time, I mean, we're gonna be 3 weeks out, almost basically.
Well, I think Commissioner Bardwell said something about maybe giving them a 30-day. Just throwing it out there.
It's always nice to have an incentive. Yeah, that is quite a distance.
Well, maybe between now and Thursday, we can have, Mr. Tussey or Jim or whatever, get with Carsby and Mike and get more answers for Thursday, what we can allow. We need to work on that MOU, like you said, to get it done, but on the other hand too, I don't want to just stop everything, because like I said, the quicker they get moving, the better.
Chairman Ron, Mr. Tussey, is scheduled to be on Thursday's agenda for the airport zoning discussion, so he will be here Thursday.
We can make a decision on Thursday how they can move forward until we get what we need.
So we'll still leave it on this Thursday's agenda for further discussion with Mr. Tussey and then move forward.
Yeah.
from there.
And the chairman, to give them notification, so it's no more than just the airport authority.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any more on that?
Thanks, Carl.
Okay. Moving to open business. I put on an open discussion to move forward with the control administrative position. And I kind of instructed Andy to put open on there because that's what I want to have, is a good discussion on this. What people heard, and I want to make sure we stay focused on this here. I don't want, today, no finger pointing, no accusations, we don't want to go into any of that today. This is very important to have an open discussion. What I'd like to do, we all heard, and if we go and the discussion goes down the end of the way, I'll stop that immediately. Because like I said, we don't want to hit finger point, we don't want to cause blame, we don't want to talk to anything about that. We want to stay focused on this here. We all heard on Monday the presentations from the two people that gave us presentations for controller administrator. I think from the conversations, we all got a good idea what it's going to cost us maybe to find a good controller administrator. Could be $130,000, $140,000, could be $150,000 plus. We don't know, but I want to go around to every commissioner and get their opinion on what they're seeing and what they heard, and what their thoughts are. And then once we do that, we could have a discussion back and forth, but we'll hear everybody out, we'll interrupt everybody, talk over everybody. And I just want to get everybody's feeling of what they heard, where they think we need to move forward with, and how that should be handled. And I want to start down there to Mr. Goodchild on what you heard, when you thinking about, because we all know too, the financial situations that we're looking down the road. Hopefully we can straighten it out, but we got some decisions that we hopefully we want to go forward. So, good job.
Yeah, I guess where I'm coming from on this, my understanding right now is that, like, I think we need to make a decision to further this process along a little bit faster than it's been going. We need some sort of controller administrator, or maybe two separate ones. I don't really care how it works out, how it shakes out. We just need to know where we stand like financially, like budget wise, we really know how much money we got, where it's all going. That's the thing that worries me the most. That's like what I want done the fastest, I guess. And the double haul solutions, and I can't remember the other name of not the nonprofit organization that spoke to us the other day. The only thing I was unclear on those was, I don't know if maybe I just didn't catch it. Or are they going to help us get caught up to speed before we get somebody? Or are they just hire a company that can find us an employee, county employee? So I know they have experience in those positions, in controller positions. And
Well, you know, I get, correct me too, Shelley, if I'm wrong here. When we first talked to that company, they did offer that service. That they could temporarily put somebody, while the search was going forward.
yeah,
But they kind of pulled away from that now. The guy, what they had to do, don't want to do that now. Or
So that was Michigan Leadership Institute that did say that they could potentially find an intern controller administrator. They actually supplied me, they found one person. And when I had contacted that person, he's not interested in the intern. He's interested in the long term. So that was something that checked, the one that Matt recommended to us there for the, he did say they've done in the past. They never can guarantee because of our area, the cost, but it's something we would pay above and beyond what they quoted us. Double Health Solutions did not offer that.
I guess I'm all for the fastest route to us getting a controller administrator. We need that situation solved. I just don't feel comfortable making decisions on spending without knowing exactly where we're at, or having someone I can go to immediately and be like, hey, how's this going to look for the county? Or, in a year, what is expected to look like? I know we don't always know, and stuff comes up and things change constantly. I think that's like a big reason why we need somebody who can take all this financial information, break it down so that I can understand exactly what's going on. The board can understand exactly where we're at and know that we're safe to move forward with these board decisions on when it comes to spending money. That's it. I think we should definitely have a sense of urgency one way or another. I'd probably rather go with a nonprofit personally. I don't know. I feel like that might be a better decision for the board. I'm not sure, but my mind can be changed on that. I'm open to anything. I just think if we all agree that this can speed up this process, then I'm for that. That's where I stand on this. I want to get this stuff done, get the ball rolling.
Mr. Barrow.
Thank you, Chair. Well said.
Yeah.
Well said, Commissioner Goodchild. For a new commissioner, you pretty much grasp the gravity of the situation. I've said all my statements over and over many times. I've seen so many people look down after I started to speak that often you become, I know it's redundant. I'm looking forward. I'm very concerned about the 25 audit. Could be nuclear. I don't know. By the time you get to the transfer outs and what's been projected from Clayette and last administration, I've brought that up a few times. $500,000 going to be out of that GSP fund. There is no money that I know of, and I often visit the treasurer just to find out exactly where we're at. But nothing's been forwarded to this board, as Commissioner Goodchild said, that would give us a sense of what we have that's unrestricted, especially when we're faced with making decisions on funding. We're riding on the tails of the GSP funds. No, circling back, I agree with everything Commissioner Goodchild said related to we need to improve the financial acumen of administration. And to take that, you need someone who's experienced in public accounting. And if you've been in the accounting world, there's three types. There's hospital healthcare accounting, there's public accounting, there's private accounting, and none of them go together and make sense if you had to integrate any of those. But on the public side, since this board is solely responsible for the fiscal management of the county fund, and that we also are responsible for the management of those funds to ensure that they're being appropriately applied and whether it be through the administration or otherwise, with the assistance of the treasurer and administration, we're simply lacking in knowing where we're at. And I think Commissioner Goodchild really briefed that very well. And I would think that would concern everyone in a sense that that when if you again looked at the financials projections from last year that Clay had left and try to compare them with this year, other than getting BSNA reports, we don't know who's running over budget. We don't know if they are over budget, where those funds are going to be coming from. We don't even know how we're going to pay for any labor negotiations. I mean, there was a appropriation, or some funding, but you don't know. And that's the fallacy until December or later when you start making the adjustments. And Commissioner, I think we got $1.9 million, or at least that from what I looked at, it takes 650,000 out of that. If that holds steady, if it's less than that, we've done a good job. More than that, we had no sense of where we were going. Looking at the whole general fund, though, as it was stated, it was over $6 million, but you got to subtract everything that we don't have, which included the GSP money. And I don't have that in front of me or go through it. But to get down to the brass tacks, I'm very interested in what the other commissioners are going to provide in terms of direction forward. From the presentations last week, I didn't realize I was hoping there'd be more questions asked. I do have a lot of experience in recruiting. They did not, they were not able to answer, especially the favorite one, whatever the name was.
The second one.
The one that did Ottawa. He couldn't answer. And I was surprised at that in terms of, someone showing up at the door and had the qualifications. These are typical things you run into if you're recruited. Or what about spousal employment? And that's the number one deterrent for anybody coming in. And he's going to do a sweep across the USA. That was his thought. So realistically, he talked about a 30% increase over the current administrator controller. Let's say that's 140,000, but I think this could get, as you said, this could go well over 200,000, depending on what this board would be willing to fund, bring somebody in. And then the question that was a little discerning, what if they leave in 6 months? There wasn't any provisions in that agreement, as I recall. How do you handle that? Oh, well, we'll make sure we get you somebody again. I'm not so sure. If it's not in writing, it's not. So I struggled with the first one. I definitely struggled with the second one a bit because I knew that he had heard all the questions of the first and I didn't really want to go there. But whatever the end result is, they're going to have to bring something to the administration to assist them and us in understanding financially our position, at least quarterly, and what funds in terms of manageability that we need to be looking at across the board. Defer back to you.
Thanks for that, Commissioner Bidwell. Move over to Commissioner Cutler.
I think of the two that gave us presentations Monday, I was more impressed with the second one. That's just my opinion on that. But again, I think that Commissioner Goodchild and Commissioner Bardwell made some good points. I don't think there's any more I can add to it. I think we definitely need to keep the ball rolling, speed it up if we can, like Commissioner Goodchild said. Because I think the whole county needs direction from that position. And I know we're stuck, in our area, the ability to pay a certain amount. But we're gonna have to, like Commissioner Bardwell said, how much are we willing to pay for that position? That's a big question that we're gonna have to answer. So it's not an easy decision, but I think we need to keep it, like I said, keep the ball rolling, like everybody said, and get it done as soon as we can. But also try to ensure we get somebody in there that's gonna, you can never say, but hopefully they stay a while. Unlike. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Chris Lutz.
Well, I think the best thing would be whether it be county controller administrator. But with the projections that Clayette left here with about the next years coming down the road, I have a big issue with that. Because the future don't look that great. I think if we're gonna go after this big money, because I think you're gonna have to get up there to get a good county controller, you're gonna have to see where the county can make some concessions to afford this position. You know, I know what Lapeer paid for theirs. I know we're not Lapeer, and I like the nonprofit guy. I think that he was, at least he knew that what the position we were looking for. The first guy didn't have that position down. He thought we was just looking for controller. So, I really think that, we need to think this through, but I want to get it done as soon as possible. As the rest of the commissioners. But I think we have to think about the money aspect, because both those guys said, you know, they're hard to come by and they want big money. And that's going to be an issue for this county. That's why I feel. Back to you.
Thank you for that. My feeling is, and I'm gonna approach this a little bit differently. I mean, the stuff that Commissioner Bardwell said and Commissioner Kitchell, we need to know where we're going, we need to know what we need to spend and everything, is absolutely correct. And I believe we will get there. And I believe that we have to, and I'm looking at this a little differently. I think with who we have, we got Erica right now as our chief accountant. I think Erica can get us where we want to be, absolutely. We can get us those numbers. But I think there's a few glitches. I mean, she came into I'm going to say what I want to say, but she came into a chaos mess. And I think she can get us to that position where we know that we're at and we got the numbers we need. Now, do we want to go look for a controller, administrator? I think we absolutely can, but I think we can accomplish that. And I'm looking at, do we go after another excellent accountant and put 2 accountants in that office to run our books? I think we can get presented, and this is just, again, my opinion. That's why I want to have this discussion. It's something that I'm thinking about considering, you know, from my point. I think without a doubt, I know that we get, of course, I'm in there every other day, and they have to be right now because things are really chaotic in there with everything that's going on. So that's just a thought I want to throw out there. Go up to another excellent accountant, put in that office, put 2 good accountants in that office, get somebody to present us our numbers, so I figure that we need, and she knows what we need. And we all, get there. We got right now, Shelley is our interim administrator. And I've been in there. She said to deal with things that's been unbelievable. I haven't seen in the 10 years I've been here, being an administrator. I think she's doing an excellent job at that. But I also understand that being the HR director and being an administrator, those 2 jobs can collide, because there's sometimes you got to be an HR director, sometimes you got to be an administrator. It's awful tough. I'm not saying that's what we want to keep going with, still being an administrator, because you can't keep up this pace. So that needs to be looked at too. But I want to throw out there that, you know, I think that we could, there's other things we can think about and still get to where we are, because the bottom line is, like Commissioner Bardwell said, Commissioner Goodchild, we all said, we need to know where we're at. We need to know where our figures are. We need to know what we have coming down the pipe. We need to know that. I think we can get there. With this audit has been crazy. I was in there just the other day and the auditor threw something in there that was like, you're kidding me. It'll take 2 days to get that. It's just been unbelievable stuff going on. And, but I just want to throw it out there for discussion after we get done with all this. Discussion, if you want to go after the controller, do we need somebody in that seat as the controller administrator? Or do we need what, we need our numbers and figures, we need to know what we can do, make a decision going forward. I think it's a conversation to have. But that's what I want to open up. I want to open up that conversation, to talk about. And I'm good with anything. Now, if we're gonna look for a controller administrator, we got two people that presented to us. One was 10,000, one was 30,000. I think this, the second guy was fine. I think he could do his job. We could also talk about us doing, getting raising our money. I mean, we told Shelley to put it out there for control administrator. We gave her a $1,200 budget. Well, now we're talking about spending 10,000 and raising 30,000. You say, okay, let's do this again, but let's raise our budget. Raise it about 5,000, 3,500, or whatever it may be, to shake more bushes, more trees, or whatever. That's another discussion that we can also have. You know, so there's things that we can sit around here and discuss this, and that's what I just kind of want to open up to now. Open up to the commissioners to for a discussion and keep talking about it. And let's get to a decision on Thursday. We got to make a decision if we want to go. We got to get it done.
So if we hired another accountant, I guess what would be the difference in that and hiring a controller administrator?
$30,000, $40,000.
But I mean, for us, though, I guess for there has to be a reason though that it's pays significantly more to be a controller administrator, correct? That's like, I'm just trying to figure out like,
Yeah.
okay, if it's, I guess like, why wouldn't everyone just hire another accountant? Why would we have a controller administrator? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, what do we lose? What are the pros and cons if we hire an accountant? If they can do the job, if two accountants can do the job.
I mean, I guess with stability. I mean, it's stability to have a controller. You know what I'm saying? It's you know, you have a control administrator. You're riding the ship, and it's always been that way. We've never been in this position before because we've had controllers that's been here for 30 years.
Yeah.
So this is new to all of us. You know, it's just to see what's out. I'm just throwing some different ideas out there to think about.
I too was in there Friday and I see what Erica's having to deal with this audit. And I think things will get easier once this audit's over with. They're asking for things that they've never asked for before because we got a new auditor and you know, they're scrambling. They're trying to figure out what they want. And maybe the two accountants might be the way to go. You have a chief accountant and a regular accountant. But I just know the projections coming down the road is not good.
And in that light, Chairman, I'm just going to go back to something since Claire's in the audience. It's no funds budget presented by fund. When we heard the $6 million, when this was projected, it was $5,350,000. It projected PGS funds at $1,896,000, and the reserves. This is major. This is where Commissioner Cook had discussions in the past. $2,017,000. If you add those two together, that's leaves this county going into the $535,547. There was nothing unassigned, nothing, no cash that we could use, period. So that takes you back to the PGS funds, whatever's been spent or whatever's left. I know we all sense we're in a near crisis, but I just look at this and thinking, could it be better than this? I haven't seen anything based on what Angie presented, and taxes being, increasing $500,000 revenue, wind energy dropping. So what do we need at the end? The most we need is someone who can assist Erica in the finance, in bringing forth the information. Now, as I said earlier, there's three types of accounting. We need somebody who's familiar with public accounting. You could get an accountant. CPAs have breadth and depth, but they're even limited at times. But someone has a track record of taking information, analyzing a lot of information, and bringing to the board or board of directors in a private organization, anyway, what they need to be informed of. Okay, 20% of something creating 80% of your revenue loss. I mean, you use the Pareto principle in a lot of ways. So we need somebody, Chairman, that has that background. Now, I heard both things that, the Master of Public Administration, finance, accounting, whatever, public finance background's hard to get. I wasn't quite bought on that. I mean, I know they're out in the field. Usually you get an MPH. Well, not NPH, MPA, you typically will concentrate on something along those lines. I mean, that's what you want to do. You've got to oversee finance. I think the real obstacle is recruiting here, unless here is very close to driving. I think that's going to be difficult. Behavioral health has recruited. We did a CEO search, and we ended up getting Julie, who stepped up, which was very fortunate for her. But on her team, there are people who drive an hour away to get here or more daily. And that's the type of, when we incurred that, we began to realize, not that we didn't realize it before, it's difficult. Maybe there is a gem out there that would have done this type of accounting before and can lead and analyze. It would make us a lot more comfortable, wouldn't it? I mean, the airboat came in and didn't have any money, and where's the 19,000 coming from? Well, there's nothing unassigned here, and I don't know where we're getting any revenue from anywhere else other than through the treasurer and our investments, which is the blessing that we have heard in the past, and I'm sure in the future. So I'm toying with the administration, and I think you are as well, in terms of what we need most. It'd be great to get somebody that could do both to some degree, but the most desperate need, I think, is the finance, the ability to present finance in a way that people can understand.
Exactly.
The elected and everyone else will know where they're at. Because even when I look at the budget report, when I had this discussion with Neil, when he produced it, I said, well, these really aren't realistic. There's no outflow. I mean, there's nothing been transferred out. And I even asked, who uses these? And Mike said, I do. I understand them. Well, if I look at yours and I just give you a picture of where you're at, not really. But I'd be more than happy to sit down with anybody to have that explained to me, because there's pieces missing. And that's not wrong, it's just the way it's set up. But from the overall standpoint, looking at those outliers that are costing us the money, or those uncertainties and projections, like whatever we want to project, it's uncertain at this point. It's crucial for what we end up with. Hopefully, we don't spend all that PGF fund going into the other 600,000 going into transfers out. And Clay at that time, which is another sheet, did an analysis of what we look like without transfers. Really nice. And what we look like with transfers, really brutal. And I was thinking when Erica came in, all you'd have to do is take these types of forms, fill them out, you know, sort of, here we go. Obviously, I'm missing something in between, but, that years of experience, and we had 30 years of continuity, we had no idea what we had. But we need that. At the same time, I'm gonna bring this up, we have people, two at least, who's been to this board multiple occasions and addressed the board in terms of their influence, responsibilities, and without remuneration. Both of which could do less if they chose to, because they're doing more, and it would cost the county money. That concerns me. I think it concerns Commissioner Cook because we never got back together on our original Commissioner Cook really wanting to meet on it, and I kept wondering how we're gonna pay for it. Where are we gonna get, where are we going? Well, because once you do something, you always create an expectation going forward. But that really bothers me too, because we have two individuals who could cost us more money than we realize, or maybe we do realize it, but we're sort of ineffectual in deciding, sort of paralyzed in what we should do with it, how we should approach that. But that could be with any, you're only as good as the people of the county, not only the employees, but the elected. As the chairman, we had a discussion not long ago, of grave concern on the confidence level that they have in us, assuring that we're going in the right direction, because it means their livelihood to some degree. They're great at it. Or their staffing. And the greatest fear I have coming at the end of the year, which Clint lived through, Mike Holden, is when we had to cut non-mandated services. First, take a look at that list. That was just the beginning of trying to balance the budget at the end to where the board had to just make it an edict, so to speak, to the elected, we need so much cut. It's not a good position to be in. So circling back, Jim, you don't need a speech, but after some getting the board and everyone, what we need someone desperately, and how we recruit that, Shelley, I'm not exactly sure. I looked at the report that you had. I've never seen any resumes, but all these candidates and A through Q who applied at some point in the past, and none basically qualified. If they did qualify, they opted out because of county environment. And but I look at that, that was more than one. That was a little bit setback for me to try to recruit somebody in, because they're going to have some assurances of some type when they come in that is not, that they're going to be met with an air of cooperation, so to speak. Right? So what additional thoughts do you have? I mean, I'm shying away from the administrator as a, not that I'm shying away, but more of the finance, and hoping that somebody that will apply would have more, a little bit of both.
Right.
That you start them as controller, like Mike Hoagland did, I believe, that way, and then he was later promoted to administrator, controller, administrator. And we could tell from an executive recruiter, the fellow, whatever its firm's name.
The one that was here.
Yeah, we could tell he was not inclined to have any county administrator, controller administrator, because there's too many restrictions. I mean, you could hear that. Well, we know the restrictions on that. But what are you thinking? What further thoughts do you have? How do you want to proceed?
Well, again, the bottom line is, and I think we ought to be, the bottom line is, we need what we need to make our decisions. That's what we have to have. If it comes from a controller or it comes from, the area comes from, well, that's, we need to have them figures. We need to know when we make a decision. We need to know when we talk about spending money, that we know where we're at. I'm just throwing it out there. I think we, with what I've said, I think we have that in place that we can get there without an issue. But there needs to be help in that office. Now it can be, we should go after a controller. I have no issues with doing that. If that's what the board wants to do, then I suggest do it. Let's talk about how we want to do it. If we want to go with the people, we want to raise our budget to look, however the board decides wants to do it. But all I know is the bottom line is we need our figures. We need the figures. We need to know. You need to say, hey, how much we got to spend? Can we spend this? Can we do this? Can we do that? We need to, that's the bottom. That's what we have to have. And again, to me, it doesn't matter if it comes from a controller. I'm not sure. It comes from what we have internally. There needs to be help done in it. If we go internally, we can go after. I think it's a lot easier to go out there and really good accountant than as a controller. I could be wrong, but that's just my feeling on it, because the bottom line is we need to have our figures. And again, it doesn't matter if it comes to me, if it comes from the controller. And talking about the administrative part, I've touched on that a little bit. I mean, I've been down there and Shelley has done a fabulous job being administrator, but it causes havoc when there's HR issues that has to come up and you're both administrator and HR, and I understand that. That's a discussion we need to have moving forward. But if we go after a control administrator, then that's me. But that's just what I'm doing, and I just want to throw it to the board and get any boards, but whatever the board feels comfortable, they need to have for figures and for decision making, whatever they feel they'd be comfortable going forward. That's, I'm behind this 100%.
Well, Chairman, the first thing that the board would have to talk to us on, or to decide on, would be, and you sort of alluded to it, what is the budget? What is the amount that you're willing to appropriate? Because Shelley, I'm not sure what's left out there to utilize. I mean, LinkedIn and all the free services. I mean, you reflected on paying for some and what you receive. What would you suggest as an avenue that might not have been tapped or something you thought about? Is there anything out there that comes to mind?
Well, first of all, for clarity, this Michigan Leadership Institute came to us from Derek Berlow because we did not have any applicants through NET. We did not have one. We've tried 3 times. I ran it out there at all the places that I think a controller administrator would be looking. I haven't ventured to LinkedIn. I'm not sure of the cost. I've heard it's costly, but it's not anything I've looked into. I did reach out to Lapeer County to find out how they found their controller administrator. Spoke to Doreen, I believe. She told me it took 2 searches and they used Paycor. I'm not familiar with that other than a payroll company I had thought. I haven't reached any further because I don't want to keep spinning my wheels and resources. Indeed, the sponsored ones, we did receive some good candidates, but unfortunately you can't stop someone from clicking on your ad. And every time they do, you're charged for it and the price goes up and we blow our budget in 24 hours. So I'm not sure if the search engine is the way to go, these companies are the way to go. When we look backwards at the money we've spent on advertising and the money we've spent to even hire individuals and then of course Plant Moran, we've already spent a lot of money. So I want to stop the bleed, and I don't have a definite answer for you. I've had some excellent candidates who have now backed out too. I don't know if we put it back out there on our own and we raised the budget, and I tried to do some research to find out where we could get the biggest bang for our buck. Would we attract someone new if we had a different salary scale or reached out further to different areas? I mean, I think that, especially I think Nate from Double Hall was alluding to the fact that he moves people from other states. I don't know. I know there's a gentleman I did speak to from Michigan Leadership Institute that they had suggested, Chuck had suggested as potentially an intern. He's looking for something long-term. I haven't had a reason to research him thoroughly. I've researched his name. And there's lots of things we could do. I just need direction. I know he was a former controller administrator at Blackwood County. So I've done a little research. Everything is a little scary to me right now.
And he has mentioned that he is interested in some full-time.
He is interested in full-time, yes. He had previously done some intern work for them. Some family dynamics going on where he was able to do that. He's currently working a full-time position that he likes. So of course, we want to leave a full-time position to be an intern if we're gonna hire someone at the end. So I did have a big conversation with him. Whatever the board would like us to do, and we've done we've done MAC, we've done all the ones that, I think Clay actually really helped me research all the avenues, we find controller administrators, and I think with all the money we spent back then, which might have been somewhere around $3,000, we received one candidate through that avenue. Most of them came through Indeed, and a lot of those are, I applaud anyone who wants to better themselves, but a lot of them absolutely did not have the credentials. So, but we get charged every time someone even looks at that ad, and I can't stop that.
So maybe it would be an avenue to check this guy out.
Yeah. I would think so. He has experience being a controller.
Not this guy. Okay. Mike Johnson, Mark Justin. Same.
Like I said, we have a lot to look into. Michigan Leadership Institute, once again, recommended to us from Dirk Remoe and the Matt they used to report.
The back of my mind, I was thinking along the same lines as, obviously, Ian. Obviously, we want to avoid, I don't know the situation, I'm looking at it now, but I think we would all agree that that would be a risk. And if not, I'm not sure why you would like to hear the reasons it wouldn't be a risk. But circling on the way, what you just said was somewhat disheartening in the sense that other than LinkedIn, what avenues are left other than professional organizations or get somebody coming right out of school, all these things that you try to find the experiential level. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm summing it up, but you're looking for board direction who as paralyzed as you are in terms of, I'm not sure what to tap into next. And I just looked up that pay, what would you call it?
Paycor, is what Karen had said?
Yeah, I looked it up. I really couldn't glean any recruiting. I'm not sure how that worked with them. Maybe there must be something there. They had services. Their HR, that's definitely.
But it took the two lengthy searches, that's how they ended up with Moses. They're very grateful.
Payroll solutions, that's what I first came up with.
Paycor, I believe is what she said.
Yeah, Paycor.
It's similar to ADP, and they have an applicant tracking and recruiting arm, so they probably have Paycor as their HRIS system, and then that's an add-on module, and then they pay extra to have them help push it out.
Yeah, something along. It's not their core business, obviously, but
I was surprised that was her response. So
I think it's Paycom.
Paycom.
Big Chief, maybe that is what she said. Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah. Our secretary is your county employee and it's they use for like approving time sheets and stuff like that.
Chairman, since Carly spoke up. Oh, what in the MSU realm, is there, I mean, in your mind, is there anything that the county could tap into I mean, the breadth and depth of MSU is great beyond description, especially with experiential people. Of course, it'd be non-academic, so to speak. Most people are academic for, they want to leave it. Is there any avenues that you could think of that we should consider?
No, I have no idea. I have nothing to add to that.
I was afraid of that. I'd say, you'd say MSU recruiting office, I'll give you the number here, dude.
University of Michigan. The other one.
Next in line.
You know what I'm saying? We gotta call the big boys in for this.
I think it'd be a lot easier to find an accountant that can do government accountant a lot easier than you're gonna find a control administrator, and you're gonna get one a whole lot cheaper.
But again, Commissioner, but again, the bottom line is, will they give us what we need?
Well, and that's true.
That's the
That's,
bottom line.
that's what we need. We need
You know,
someone
we
who's gonna
need-
give us the numbers.
We know, we've been there long enough. Let's just tell drunk fat. We know what the figures we need to do. I believe it would. I believe we could do that with that position. But again, because that's the bottom line. We need to have the right information to make the right decisions. No matter what the decision is. If we can do that with a good accountant and what we have in place, I believe we could. But again, it's up strictly up to the board, whichever was where they want to go. Is this way we.
I think you'd open the field up a lot more, because when these guys were here talking, they said county control administrators, they're pretty hard to find, and they're gonna be expensive.
They are, but if that's what we need, that's what we need.
Well, that's
You
true.
know, I mean,
You still gotta be able to pay for it.
that's true. You know, that is very, very true.
Chairman, wouldn't the board, and I'll just circle back again to what was said. The most immediate need is someone with controllership experience, someone with a financial experience, the presentation experience. The admin is secondary. Maybe that'll come with it, maybe not. I referred back to Mike Holger, that's how he started. Mike had no formal experience. I remember, I think he didn't have an accounting degree. I remember that. Maybe he did, I don't know. But he was as detailed as he could be. So I'm using that maybe not as an example, but I would think we'd want to develop or modify our position description, and maybe it doesn't need it on the controller side with potential avenues for admin or something, a tagline. I'm not opposed to LinkedIn, except it's, what comes back. 88% is non-usable information, and they click on it, and we have to pay for it. But outside a recruiting firm, which is more targeted and which is going to be expensive. I mean, we could set our recruitment area, which just makes it more difficult. We'll just say the state of Michigan, for instance. And then you have more of a targeted search. I mean, what's going to cost?
Good cost.
I mean, 20,000. And I was reading the Leadership Institute. Yeah, it had a low price, but there's a lot of it. There were additions to that if you read between the lines there. I mean, not that that's bad, but no, not opposed the way that was presented, but to meet the needs of the county is a box to put things in. So I guess the two choices, Chairman, on the board is, we consider, unless the elected has thoughts, because this is an open meeting, right?
We'll get
What
to-
you
yeah.
wanted was,
That's what I want. I want, when we're done with our discussions and throwing things around, yeah, we want to, this is what I want.
we could work two avenues. It's a lot of work, but I'm not sure Shelley has the time ability, especially with the payroll discussions that we heard not too long ago, and the time it takes and the energy to Barrett, a personal search, a county search, and even consider a plan search through a recruiting firm. And which firm would that be? And then the first one I was thinking of as a comparative would be whatever TBS used at the time, and I thought it was out of Midland. Could find out though. And have it checked out, but the bottom line is how the decision is, do we try our own, do some medium, or do we try a firm? Which is going to be costly, and we just saw that we're running off PGS funds probably.
You know, even that one company will say, oh, yeah, we go nationwide. Well, you're not gonna move somebody from another state over here for under 200 grand a year.
They're gonna want moving expenses.
Oh, that's gonna be crazy. So that really doesn't help us, because I know somebody gonna move here 4 or 5 states away. That
No, if you're in that business of moving that farm, I said gross up. If you don't know what that means, if you're moving expenses are gross up where you don't have to pay the taxes on the corporate, who's ever recruiting you pays the taxes. And also there's all kinds of ways of helping them assist in purchasing a home, finding a home. There's all kinds of avenues that you're in that,
when you're in that realm, yeah.
yeah. And
It
if you
gets
want to bad,
expensive in a hurry.
they tie up. It's gonna cost a bit either way, but the recruiting firm probably gonna be less time, whereas unless you're lucky. I'm posing this question because you have to decide on which avenue to use, and that's what you're asking. What direction do you want me to go in? And what tools or resources do you want me to engage in? And I think based on this, the ones right off the top of the list are gone unless you re-engage. Is there anybody in here that is worth re-engaging with, even though they may have withdrawn? Maybe one.
There's Candy ladies who asked for their resume to not be shredded and never contacted again. That would be my preference.
I'd say that was,
I'd say that was no.
I'm saying, yeah, that's a no.
I did hear back from one of the candidates that I haven't been able to reach, although lacking in quite a bit of the qualifications that we had set forth. If the board remembers, and some of you weren't here, when Platt became controller administrator and she was denied a chief accountant, we had to throw that into one big happy job description, and that's kind of still where it's landed. She was required to do both positions, so maybe it's going to be trying to separate those somewhat back out. Right now, we've left them the way we are because the work needs to be done regardless of what you call the person.
Yeah, I can go back to 1986 and bring the eyes up to where we're at today.
Man, if you could use the.
I'd like to hear that.
You guys are ready for a little history. That's tough to be honest, but I don't want you to make the same mistakes that we learned from where we got. Because I'm hearing some of that on the floor.
Well,
Yeah,
Chairman,
I would love to hear
suggest
that.
We allow Clay to bring us up to date so we don't reinvent the wheel
I agree.
with the board approval.
I agree.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Lance Zachmeister, Elmer Charter Township, former accounts payable clerk, former chief accountant, former controller administrator, voice of lived experience. So going back to, I started with the county in 1988. Prior to me coming here, they just put a controller into play. It would have been Mr. Hoagland. Would have been 86 or 87. At that time, I believe it was Chairman Worth, Bill Worth, that decided that we need to have an administrator. At that time, if you don't have an administrator, all your non-elected departments have no one to come to other than straight to the board. So they decided we need somebody to administer those functions behind the scenes and not everything coming to the board floor every time and every little thing that has to get taken care of. So, of course, he started as controller administrator, which is vital and crucial to the county.
And then they added the admin role to him. Therefore, we got a controller/administrator. What that did is incorporated your finance information, the presentation of the information, got all the other departments kind of in line, started creating policies, rules and regulations across the, across the table in Tuscola County, which was obviously crucial, and we still use and have updated those policies today. After that, now the controller administrator is doing his job, things are rolling along. At that point in time, the accounting functions were in the treasurer's office and the county clerk's office. I was an accounts payable clerk working for the county clerk at the time, and then the other finance person was actually a deputy treasurer, chief deputy treasurer at the time. In walks the next board group of individuals for the county, and it was Chairwoman Norma Bates at the time that decided we need a structure so the controller now can do his job, because his hands are tied, because you're working with two elected office separate positions and you're trying to pull the accounts payable, the check writing, the processing, as well as the general ledger being maintained at that time by the county treasurer's office. There were accounts being set up, there were funds being set up, and the controller, who was your CFO, didn't know what was going on. He's looking at a finance report, and there's all this new stuff popping up in front of him. He's like, wait a minute, we got to have some control. So we got to get this, in one place, under one roof. So then Norma Bates took it upon herself at the time to launch forward and create the accounting department, which put all that jurisdiction under your controller administrator. Now, at that time, I was an accounts payable clerk. I was union president. I was very strong on that side, and they referred to administration as the front office. And, I believe it was the former Judge Joslin that said that I'm going to the dark side. So at that point in time, I was moved under the controller administrator as accounts payable clerk. The chief deputy from the treasurer's office became the chief accountant. So there you got your two solid finance people under your controller, your chief financial officer. We had 3 people deep in finance, and we created this accounting department that worked, that got us where we needed to go. That, the information to the commissioners improved, started getting your charts and graphs. The administrator role that Mr. Hoagland at that time carried on was able to present that information while you had 2 people in the background, 2 solid accounting people in the background. Things are rolling along good. What currently happened was, and we were too deep in HR too. So we had an HR main person, and then we had the fiscal personal analyst. Over the years, we've lost all that. So when I took the controller administrator's job, commissioners did not replace the chief accountant. Your controller administrator lost one of his key financial persons. So therefore, that job had to get split up. And then in the HR arena, we lost a fiscal personnel analyst. That didn't get refilled. So we lost the person that was in charge of benefits, budget, finance in the HR world. It weakened the whole department. So this is where we're at today because of these decisions that were made. So again, there was a lot of controversy over those 2 functions getting pulled from elected positions. That all stemmed from a 1987 case the Michigan Supreme Court had seen in, I think it was Ottawa County. And Ottawa County said that the Board of Commissioners have the right and authority to assign those responsibilities. And that's how they created the accounting department. So I see us kind of going backwards. You got to have an administrator. You need a chief. You got your chief. You need another finance person. Whether you do it as having an administrator and another finance, but you got to have an administrator. Because if you don't, who are the non-elected departments going to work with on policy changes, complaints,
Yeah.
positive, negatives, all that stuff?
Yeah, I don't think they could. We got an administrator. I mean, we have an interim administrator right now. We have to have the sort. So for the last 2 years, Justin is, you need a controller and 2 financial people.
I would say if you're gonna have an administrator, strengthen your finance. Yeah, your chief accountant, have another finance person. And then you still got your HR too. The fiscal personnel analyst was that person. And we've lost that. Should have been, but because I didn't have a chief accountant, I'm divvying the work out all over the place. People were hired to do one thing and I'm pushing other stuff on them because, again, I mean, they got to scramble like it is today. So don't chop yourself off at the knees again. This is crucial. It's important. Being fiscally responsible is making sure you have a solid finance department. That's what was founded to move forward for Tuscola County, and it's falling apart, and you need solid finance people. You need a good administrator in place too.
If we got an accountant or someone with, I guess, finance experience, probably public finance experience, that had leadership, I guess, characteristics, qualities about that person, could that, in your past experience, like, would that be able to fit what we need to get on track, do you
Well,
think?
and that would be like an administrator / controller. Because you
Yeah.
really need that solid leadership.
Yeah,
And we're not talking about, we're not just one office. Our office touches all offices. In other entities, you're talking legal, you're talking with, bond counsel, you're making sure compliances are done with the state and the feds, all that stuff falls under one roof. And the conformity and the fiscal responsibility of it. And also it's easier, the commissioners know who to talk to or know who to turn to. You have that open communication. And if you have a concern, you go there and you say, I need this information presented. And that information, you got the staff to compile that data and put it before you. So, when you don't have that, and unfortunately, we got our, unfortunately for Erica, walking into what she had to walk into and try to pull it all together, and it's audit time, but at the same time, everything else is piled on. You got to have a finance department where people are working together for the main common goal. And it's hard to do when you get pulled in 20 different directions. What do you do first? What's more important than the other thing? And then it doesn't help either, when the internal bashings happen, which I've seen some of that, and I'm very disappointed in some leaders of this county for internally bashing people. So I'm just going to leave it at that, though.
Go Reverend Clint. Well, having lived
Okay.
having lived there.
You might want to be excused, but we ain't excused you.
Having lived your history, some of it, I understand what you're saying, and it is amazing, the transition and then seeing it unravel. I guess succession planning wasn't in the forefront of everybody's mind way back then. I know what the ideal is, but when I look at what you projected, not that that's wrong, right, wrong, or different, because I value your experience in that. With $500,000 this year, potential transfer or just of the PGS to make up 2.2 million in 25, 26. We're faced with, as you know very rarely, we're faced with funding crisis that we can't even recognize yet because we don't have the standing to know where we're at. That concerns me, but I know exactly what you're saying. You don't want to step backwards, but on the other hand, I know the administration's role is very important. However, trying to get them both may be more of a challenge than time length that we could get, unless we did what Norma did with Hoagland or back in the old days. To get somebody here, the first thing we talked about recruiting, I kept circling around, what are you gonna do for recruiting? All right, I'm gonna go to another area. In terms of pay. If you think you're gonna recruit for what Clay was paid, you get another thought coming. And that 30% was probably minor compared to. And you get what you got when they come in. So somewhere between the 145, what I'm just thinking to attract somebody. When you can't attract somebody, you attract those who are attractable by pay and benefits, opportunity, independence, the ability to use their thinking and work with others. So the next area is that if you're going to recruit, no matter whatever you do, you have to decide on a range of pay. And not to say that Plant was paid unjustly.
Yes, it was.
I think it was a lie.
Don't ask me to speak over there.
Those are board decisions, but I can take that across all the elected and the employees as well. We never kept them, you know, we did wage studies, we were fighting with results.
Yep.
It was a real challenge. So respectfully, you held the course and stayed there. And we appreciate that. I guess it's pretty minor compared to good that pay more going elsewhere, of course, but.
Yeah, and it, you know, and that's it too. I had the offers, I had the opportunities, and I could have made more money. But it was more about this county for me. It was more, you know, there was something else there. That's the person you gotta find. Somebody who has more at stake. Somebody who wants to move this county forward. Somebody, you know, when we were first looking around the first round of people applying and stuff, you know, people from other states and stuff, you know, you start thinking, well, they could be good, but you get them here. Are they really going to want to stay here? Or do they really want to be vested? You know, those things you have to think about when you're putting somebody in a position or a role like this, that, you know, it's about the county. It's not, the job is extremely important, but it's just a title. It's what you do with it internally and how you work together internally for Team Tuscola, you know, and it's hard to find that nowadays up there. It really is, because people do, you know, I think the normal course of somebody in that kind of role is a 5-year stay, and that's about it.
What was the moving up to move out? I mean, that's, if you're,
It's a stepping stone.
yeah, I mean, that's pretty common. That's not just the Gen X's, that's pre-Gen X and beyond. Depends on how much of an entrepreneur you are. All right, so let's say hypothetically that the salary range would be 134 to 144. Pick a number
For what title?
for the controller.
Just a controller?
Well, with the administrator position forthcoming. But the most important thing is to center on the finance figure where we're at. But you're gonna have to administrator no matter what. Got to cross that bridge somewhere. I'm not sure we'll get both of them combined. We could search for, can add it in like we always have. But once we get under the act, I mean, it's sort of hard to either do one or the other, as you know. You can only do one or the other until you make it a control administrator. And maybe I raised it up a bit only because I wanted to see what you thought in terms of attractiveness of candidates who are happy where they're at, but may want to move if it's the right condition. We don't have the pension plan that we used to have. Our health insurance is not anything that's stellar anymore. We're losing our attractiveness other than the great area we live in, so to speak. All right, so there's an option to attract a higher level. Maybe that brings somebody in closer to the county. Maybe that brings somebody in the county who has a background or experience. I don't know. You raise it up, you wait to see. All right, there's an option. The third option is, which I mentioned payroll last week, and it was Derek that sort of jumped on it, was that outsourced payroll. You outsource your, as they say, so to speak, you outsource your finance. I know what you're looking, but these are options. but the board has to decide.
We looked at that before though,
Oh, yeah, always look at
and
it.
it was
You
not
never, you have to find the right individuals. It can't be a part-timer, so to speak, but it's been done. When you look at the board of options, they all have different risks, desirability, so to speak. That's definitely another one. So it tends, since the original one of recruiting, we sort of go in circular, as in LinkedIn or whatever. The real attractive is the benefit package, which has to be commensurate with experience, which is the key word, commensurate with experience. Want the board to think about that, because that is one of the areas that makes recruiting interesting, but it also is something that is very attractive to candidates in terms of moving up. Now, what's that do to the rest of the county and the elected? I mean, it just steps right out of the box. The distance between the highest paid currently versus the highest paid, which is normally the administrative control, however you want to say it.
And don't forget, you got labor negotiations this year.
And labor negotiation, which I mentioned earlier is an unknown, and I don't, this is, well, we'll keep our thoughts to ourselves.
Well, even sitting there and you hear $200,000 thrown out on you guys in your discussion, and right away, it's,
Nobody discussed that, we're giving them right to the
I'm just saying,
They're telling us that we're looking for somebody else with a bike car.
yeah,
Yeah, we didn't have to do
that
it.
doesn't fare well for people. It's been here for many years.
Well, for recruiting, that's a very accurate number depending on who you engage in. I mean, that's probably very close. It could be 190, could be 180, doesn't matter what it is. It's still over $1. You must have it. You must have it hidden.
Would you come back?
That's the second time I've been asked today and the answer's still no. Sorry.
And I wasn't one of those. Because
I know, no.
I respect your decision. It was tough enough.
You done? I can sit
And
down.
anything else, we're glad what you said.
You're all done now. I thought. And the brevity of this whole thing is that you can understand, if you didn't before, the challenges that this board is being faced with compared to, as I mentioned earlier, to other individuals who could cost the county money, who are just as entitled, who have set aside for years now, multiple boards, over time, has the same concern, only at a lesser level. So it's all relative. But because of the nature of this decision, we don't get serious until we start talking salaries and benefits. Because that's what you have to work with. And the benefits are pretty much set. Right? Unless they negotiate something extraneous, which is not uncommon, as you know. But even if you had the salary, say it's 134, and that's what the other guy was suggesting, just starting. Then you'd have to have a means to distribute that request. And that is either, I would say, internal to the county, external to the county, to the communities, or wherever they're going out. You can't use marketplace, I guess, where you can pick your circle. This is what we need. How would you, let's just hypothetically, say it's 134, whatever number you want to use. How would you promote that?
So we've had a couple of good candidates, and if we had a higher wage scale to work with, hopefully some of the situations that make those candidates, they've settled down now, maybe those candidates withdraw. I mean, we're all trying to work together. I mean, maybe those candidates would have an interest, maybe with the different wage structure, we could reach out a little further. Again, Mac felt sorry for us, which is how we received Michigan Leadership Institute, because we didn't receive one candidate through Mac. And that's not very common from what I understand. I'd be willing to try it again, and if we capped the budget for that, maybe worked on the job description a little differently, since we've taken chief accountant and all the finance positions that were lost when Fayette became controller administrator, tried to divide those back out and come back to, I talked about this before, a Mike Hoagland controller administrator, but then as Fayette mentioned, we have to have the structure back in our office. Fayette reminded me this morning, at one point that office with 6 people leave. I don't recall if I remember seeing it, 6 people leave, but
Two HR, 2 finance, controller administrator, and then you have your person the front desk, the nutshell kind of receptionist, did the agendas and all that.
so that was people. So we would need the structure behind us. Erica's doing a fantastic job in everything she's doing. And I do appreciate commissioners who did come in and speak to us to try to dive deep into what we're going through the audit and through all of that. Back to your original question, we could try it again. I was trying to look at Michigan Leadership Institute, Commissioner Virgo, and I do see, I believe the mileage would be the factor unless I missed something else. Otherwise, they're around $12,000. I mean,
It's
either the
the,
mileage.
how was that, I have to go back, something about other expenses to meet the county needs.
Well, it does say it's capped. That's where I was a little not clear on that language, because it's capped at 1,700 something. We could try it again. I could go to the board for discretion. I could reach back out to the couple of strong candidates to see if they've reconsidered, or if they would reconsider. We can handle this over the board would like. We're handling it now. It's just, it's not a good answer to the long term. I can't keep this case up. I don't expect Erica to keep this case up.
Chairman, I have another thought. If you're, let's say we set you gotta set the wage. Before you engage with Michigan Leadership or anyone else, you'd want to exhaust what you have, that you might have candidates out there that might qualify, because obviously there's no finder's fee or anything like that attached to it. Circling back a moment, in terms of the 5, I mean, we were staffed out there pretty heavily at one time, and as everybody would know, and Clay would know it even better, when the finances start going lean, and then the first thing when you tap into that non-mandated services, the first cry will be overstaffing admin, because you're reducing essential staffing in departments. That's a whole new area that this board has experienced yet.
That finance is essential.
Finance is essential, but what I'm saying, the perception is, as you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, is that everybody has essential employees. And when it gets to the courts, in the court case, it's sort of decided that minimum serviceable level. So everybody has that opportunity. It doesn't go well. So that's the opportunity cost. You know, if this board, any board would have to share that responsibility. Now circling back to what you just said, yeah, I think so. What would you agree that establishing at some point the benefit? I mean, the salary at least, so that you could reach out, and if so, when would you want that to occur?
Well, I would definitely be willing to try to engage previous candidates to see if they would reconsider. As we all know, if that doesn't work, then we're looking at, no matter which, if we want one of these routes, we're looking at, what, 14 weeks down the road? So the sooner the better, but of course, with that being said, I want the board to have time to think about all of this, because the concessions are going to need to be made in the future. This is a huge decision. I want the board members to be able to discuss this. As I said, I appreciate the commissioners who did come in, sit down, speak to us, and they actually do understand what's going on. And if the board needs more time, and maybe more commissioners want to come in and understand, so you have a better understanding. Although Clay did an excellent job of explaining everything that goes on there, we would gladly welcome you and appreciate that opportunity. Maybe you have a better understanding of what is needed in that office. Not that it would, but you wanted more time. I would like to see something sooner than later, of course, but I also want the board, especially taking into consideration history and where we're at again right now, to be comfortable in your decisions.
All right, so taking this to a higher level, appreciate that. I'm circling back to the wage level, and you're gonna have to have a contract period. And the longer the contract, the more attractiveness, because you don't, unless, you have your caveats within the contract of being released, but a 3-year contract is probably something the board ought to consider. Year's not gonna do it, 2 years is not gonna do it. You gotta have some permeability there, or permanently. But there has to be an attractive offer. And then, and it certainly would include, in the past, probably, I don't know what you're gonna be faced with, but there's always the bonus situation, there's all kinds of, depends on how eager you are, you just mentioned the time limit, and how eager they are to step in, but they have to be immensely appropriately qualified. Not a learning curve. I'm not gonna have somebody, a client come in and teach them how to do something again, but they have to have a sense of, it'd be nice to be SNA or whatever they're doing and demonstrate such same. So Chairman, I'm laying this out in a sense for your thinking that first step is got to establish it. What do you want to recruit? What's the package? Secondly, Shelley would approach who she thought might be reconsidered. And then thirdly, obviously the board is not even wanting to go to outsourcing. Thirdly, then you're faced with a recruiting firm. But at the same time, I mean, you can try to recruit yourself on LinkedIn, but at the same time, at some point, we're going to have to address 2 individuals that will be elected who have indicated that they could not do certain services and cost the county money. So forgo that. So there are some strings attached, unless you don't want to attach them, but there may be financial consequences. I don't know. But I think Commissioner Cook and I probably are more familiar with that end of what could occur. So how do you want to proceed, John?
Well, of course, I understand what you're saying. Of course, we're talking with the control administrator today, but I understand what you're saying there. What I'm taking again from the comments, and I'm going to try to absorb everything. I'm taking that the board is favored of searching for the control administrator role instead of another accountant picking up that office. That way, I'm taking that's the direction that I'm hearing is what we want to do.
I mean, I think that's the message I got from Clay, and kind of what seems to make most sense to me, I guess.
They'll be strong in one and weak in another, but again,
Yeah,
it's
you know,
something that's,
like I tried to say, our bottom line is, what our bottom line is, we need to know our figures. That's where,
Yeah.
and again, I don't care if it comes from a controller or if it comes from, but we gotta take the money into consideration and everything. But, so I tell you what, let's take about a 10-minute recess. Come back and we'll wrap up our discussion. Then we'll turn it over if everybody else, the audience wants to talk, give us their 2 cents. On it, and we can discuss that, and then we'll get a direction to Shelley or which way we want to go, and get on a Thursday, whatever we want to do. So we'll take about a 10-minute recess, and we'll come back, we'll wrap it up, and then we'll turn it over to Everybody ready? Welcome back, committee of the whole. Okay, we'll continue this. I think we'll send it out here to the people that want to get up here and that's the situation and what they're seeing. We're not gonna limit you to 5 minutes, but maybe like 10 minutes. We'll put on here and give you 10 minutes to address the board if you're sort of there. You don't have to if you don't want to. But that way, if everybody here has any thoughts or anything they want to add to what they've heard this morning, then we'll bring it back to the board for final discussion and get hopefully some directions to Shelley and them which way to go forward. So with that being said, whoever wants to come up and address the board this time can do that. If they didn't want to add and not add, and again, you don't have to. Everybody but Ian.
Ian Lee, Chief Information Officer. I didn't start the timer on my phone, but I promise you I'll be under time. As with anything, any decision that we make, I hope that we're using the reasoning of cybersecurity and technology and the investments that we've already made in this decision-making process of a candidate to come in here. The last controller administrator, Mr. Hammerbacher, didn't agree with that and was actively trying to reduce the amount of investment we were putting into technology. And I really hope that this board takes that in consideration of the opposite direction that we want to go. So that's just my opinion and my concern. Please and thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Hey,
Sorry.
see you in 4 minutes, Mike, just thinking about it.
I missed the very beginning of the second phase because I was talking with my youngest, Angie Daniels, Equalization Director. I just had a few thoughts. Again, have a little history with the Controller Administrator's Office, having started there in my career. So I'm gonna try and just, I think Commissioner Goodchild, you had a very good question. Like what would that look like if we did have, 2 accountants versus a controller administrator? And I think that kind of hit the nail on the head. Like you as commissioners, I feel like right now need to be presented with that information. Who does what in the front office? And I think you guys, some of you, it sounds like have had discussions with the front office, and I think that's good. But I think before we would consider something like that, I think that a lot of information, you guys should be armed with a lot more information, right? So, so again, getting back to that, we've had a lot of changes over the years with that front office. We've had fiscal analyst, and then, not had a fiscal analyst, had a chief accountant, didn't have a chief accountant. I will say, I echo the sentiments, I believe, of CLAT and others that, when CLAT was put in that position of controller administrator and didn't have a chief accountant, I didn't agree with that for her. I think that pulled her in too many different directions. So that's my personal belief, is that I definitely like the model of a controller administrator and a chief accountant. I think that too oftentimes right now too, I feel like discussion ends up heading towards, let's lower the standard because we can't maybe fill a position or we can't find candidates. I think that the controller administrator position is very important. I've witnessed other counties that don't currently have a controller administrator. I see the struggles, I believe, that occur because they don't have a controller administrator. And I guess I'll leave that section at that. Sorry, I just have so many. I just want to make sure that, like I said, getting back to it, I think you guys need to be presented with more information before you make any of these decisions, at least as far as the hierarchy and structure, okay? Because even I myself, and I know other department heads, we're struggling a little bit at times to know And rightfully so. There's been a lot of changes in that front office. So it's like, all right, who is on first? Who is on second? Who is doing what? And then therefore, what would that look like if we made those changes? Okay, so I think we need a good recap of the present structure, who's doing what changes have been recently made. Because again, you know, we had Clayette as controller administrator. We knew what that structure was. Then we brought Neil in, you know, and then obviously when Neil left, there were other changes made. I think we kind of need to track. I know if I were commissioner, I would want to see that. I want to see, you know, what changes have we made? Recap all of that, and then we'll know how to move forward. And again, I think it's great that you're doing this discussion. I think talk to the department heads, talk, you know, to your fellow commissioners, figure out what's working, what's not, and get their feedback. I get that time is of the essence because I can't even imagine at times. We have an idea of what this front office is going through as far as, you know, we needed somebody months ago. We've lacked that consistency, but I agree with the statement, we can't rush on this decision. So let's do our due diligence. Let's make it our top priority, but let's do it the right way. And I think that's all for now. If I think of my other thoughts, like I said, I had a lot of them throughout the meeting, but I just think let's just make sure we do this right. I don't have an issue as a taxpayer putting the proper resources on this task either. You know, I think that it's very, very important going forward. A lot of departments and governments are dealing with a lot of turnover, you know, and that office is a direct result. How much money have we spent because we've had all that turnover? So again, I'd rather pay the money up front than pay for it after the fact because something didn't work out. So I think this is a situation where we're going to get what we pay for. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners.
morning.
I apologize. Did not realize that us as department heads were going to have an opportunity to speak and give you some of our thoughts and concerns. So I'm not as prepared as I normally like to be when I'm addressing the board. And I think that it's very important that the board pays attention to what your elected officials and your department heads are saying. And as we're trying to engage with you right now, I think that listening is important. We've been without a controller administrator for almost 12 months. And I think during that 12 months, everybody has tried to step up to the plate and assist where we could, and provide guidance. And unfortunately, sometimes that has been frustrating for multiple people. Some of that frustration comes from not understanding whose role is what role. And I don't think that that's really anybody's fault. I think that the front office is trying to figure that out themselves. You know, after Renee left, I know who does some of those, what tasks she was done, but I don't think that we have been communicated with as electeds and department heads to know who really is doing what positions in that office. I agree and echo with what Ms. Daniels said as to you need to look and see where that office is at right now. Who do you have in that office? What positions do you have? The needs of the county, since even when Clayette, from 1988 to 2025, the needs have changed. I know when I first started in 2009 that everything was logged by hand. Well, I hope we're not still doing that in today's world of the technology that we want to implement and bring in. You know, Ian is able to assist with that technology and automate some things, hopefully, and make our jobs easier. I mean, that's what the whole goal is, so that we can become as efficient as possible. But without knowing some of those duties of what that office looks like, and not having structure in that office for almost 12 months, I think everybody is just trying to survive. And that's not a good way to work. It's not a good work environment. Relationships are not able to be built because everybody is so busy doing everything just to stay above water. You cannot communicate the best that you should be able to. So I agree that you need to have a better understanding, as do we, if you want our opinion, as to what are the tasks that need to be done? How could those tasks be laid out? In what positions are truly needed today? Not what positions were there many years ago. I don't believe that, just because there was 6 people in 2000, right prior to 2008, when we were laying people off, do I think that is 100% the answer we go back to today? Not without further review and further ideas to what that structure would look like. Where is it at financially? We've been budgeted in 2025 for a certain amount of money to pay for a controller administrator. Many months did not happen. We took some of that money to pay an increase to 2 people that were doing interim work and did a step-up pay. But what does that look like moving forward when everybody is in their seat and those step-up pay increases are removed and everybody kind of can go back to their AKA normal tasks? What does that look like? Who's going to then continue to do that step-up pay job? Do we have the right people in the right positions currently? Are we utilizing staff's talents the best that we can? If you have somebody that is very good and loves numbers, but they're not working with numbers, you need to maybe look at that. If you have somebody that doesn't love numbers, but they're working with numbers, well, we need to look at that as well. And so I 100% agree that I don't know that you have enough information today to make a full decision, even though we've been just surviving for 12 months. I think that there's some position layouts that need to happen. Some potential job descriptions need to be laid out as to how you would disperse the duties of that office in a plan moving forward. I feel that we need a controller administrator. I feel we need leadership. And I think that we need to have somebody that can communicate our financial picture in layman terms. We don't need high level. That is for that person to get and understand. They need to be able to transition that into language that our taxpayers can understand, language that you as commissioners can understand, language that elected and departments can understand. So I appreciate the robust discussion today. I think it was helpful to have the 2 search companies come in a couple of weeks ago and say like what they think that they could do for us. But where does that payment come from if we select one of them? I haven't seen where that would be budgeted and how we're going to pay for that. Is it going to come out of the leftover salary from that? Erica is brand new. Where does her structure and her position fit into that pay hierarchy and the salary that's been budgeted? What do you have left in a salary line item? Those are questions that as an elected, I think that you need in order to move forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Both of them were good. Good point. Give us something to think about. Appreciate it. Anybody else have virtual? All right, we appreciate that. And let's bring it back to the board now. And
I have a question,
where do we want to go here, guys? Okay, push to the roof.
just a question. So you want to look for administrator, or you want to look for a county controller, or just a controller and work them into an administrator lead? Well, where's the board feel about that?
I think we need leadership. I think we need somebody who can communicate to the board. Someone who knows what's going on, like financially can figure that stuff out, can communicate to the board. And definitely from Clayette, from director, that's kind of our discussion here. Like if you had somebody who can, who has that authority to talk to these department heads and directors, anything like that, to kind of pull everybody together and say, hey, this is how we got to get stuff done, that can come to the board and say, hey, this is an issue we have. We need to get this fixed. We have a problem with this person, whatever it is. I'm not saying that there is problems with people or anything like that. I'm just saying if there are issues that come up, a checks type of situation, they can be the person in between the treasurer and the front office. They are the person who's going to solve problems like that, tell people what is expected of them and what they ought to do. That's going to be here every day, working alongside everybody. Understand, as a board, it is our job to, at the end of the day, the buck stops here. We have accountability over, the county, right? We are the county commissioners, right? We're the ones held accountable for the county. But we need someone who's here every day. I think someone here, from what I understand now, we need someone here who's here every day, working alongside everybody, and can tell us what is the situation on the ground when we come in here to try to make decisions for our constituents. I don't know. And anyone, open that up to anybody.
I agree with you 100%. As far as the sub administrator, like I said, temporarily, we made Shelley the interim administrator.
Yeah.
So he's been handling the task. He's been as good as I've ever seen done. Okay, well, with that being said, moving forward, how long can she keep up that pace? She's not gonna keep up that pace.
That's what,
That's the question. We do want somebody that can explain to us in layman terms what we need to know, like clerk mentioned, but people, we need to know where we're at financially for all these decisions that are going to come down the road. I laid out what I thought would work, but that may not be what this board desired. We're going to say, hey, all fine and good, but we need to get a control administrator back in this office to take the reins. And I'm fine with that too, if that's the board's decision. I think we've discussed this back and forth. We need to discuss this board now. What is going to be our directive for our HR director? Which way does this board want to go? I mean, again, maybe it's too late. Maybe we're not ready to make that decision. Maybe we want to do a little more research. Maybe we want to get back in there, talk to the girls. Okay, what's your job? What are you doing now? What are you doing now? What do we need? Maybe like Andy said and Jordy said, maybe we need to take some time and study what we have right now and make an educated decision if we go with another great account or we go with the control administrator. We need to know the answers. The answers have to be asked. So that's something we can do too. Say, hey, let's take some time. Let's talk to everybody. Let's get everybody's job description. What's going on? What are they exactly doing now? What is everything Erica's doing? What is everything Shelley is doing? What is everything, to find out what everybody right now is doing. And then say, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to consolidate this. They can't do this. They may be better here. Now we can add this. Maybe we got some more thinking to do. Again, that's something that the board can decide too, which way they want to do. Because I think that's a good idea. I mean, you find out exactly what everybody's doing, what's going to make her. We've been asking Erica, we need these numbers. Okay, what's going to help you get to where we want you to be? These are all questions, answers that we gotta address.
And
So,
Chairman, in honor of former Commissioner Young, I don't want to see you kick the can down the road a little bit further.
Well, I don't either, but
I
I'm
do
here to make a
think-
decision for that.
I think
but
we've been,
There's been some good points made too that
10
hey,
months, let's step back.
let's not rush this.
What does the future look like in that
No.
office?
Yeah, let's maybe take a look at a couple of different things before you make that final decision. Because we've gone this long. We can hold on a little line. I don't want to hold too long, but hey,
Right.
I'm open up to the board. Talk to, what do you think?
I would encourage for the rest of the commissioners to go in there and talk to them. I've been there. If you haven't been in there, you need to go in there and talk. They're not gonna bite you. Go in there and ask them what they're doing.
Chairman, I was a little differently. I'm going to tag off from the leadership discussion
Sure.
that Commissioner Goodchild provided. I think in the roundabout discussion and the searching to see what the position was going to be, definitely control administrators is there. I just reread the last job description. I mean, it's pretty pertinent. It could be tweaked a little bit here and there, but it pretty much resounds exactly what you had seen. You should get a copy from Shelley and just go over it. So I'll set that one aside. So that's the answer to yours in terms of my mind is let's cut the chase. That's it. So we get ready. Again, if that one's already been settled between the board, then it's the benefit package and how to recruit. I think the resounding question that was between the public comment was the fact that there's not an understanding of what roles people have in admin today. Obviously, it's been shifted. There was raises given or step up pays. And I think rather than visit, I don't need to visit. Personally, I don't need to visit. I'm just looking for results. The needs are pretty clear, and that's financial, a step up financially, especially. And I'm not sure if the roles within the organization, now that the elected brought it up, are appropriate. And I don't want to get into operations management of the admin because that's not our responsibility at all. We shouldn't be doing that. Our responsibility is financial. Now, with that financial responsibility, yes, we want to make sure we have the right positioning. And to understand that, Chairman, I'm going to request board approval, organizational chart, and summary of job duties so we can understand the differentiation of what's happening financially and otherwise, especially if there's cross-functional activities going on like payroll, which sort of shut down AP for a while or whatever it was being manifested last time we met. So from that perspective, there's a plethora of conversation that we had this morning with a lot of potential plus and negative consequences. When we start talking about pay, we glossed over them, but I think we all know what we're talking about or can sense in terms of the impact of an organization. But at this level, our role is to make sure that we have the right people through the administrator to do the job that this board requires financially. Otherwise, the public holds us accountable for mismanagement and how their sensitivity in terms of patience of longevity is probably coming to a close. It's been 6 months and people's whole year. So I think at the utmost, we need to move along. But to do that, it was suggested again that we understand currently what activities, whose role, and we'd like to add on that, Chairman, the needs. What are the top needs? I mean, not a list of 2 pages, but in terms for financial acumen. So understand, be able to present to this board legitimate financials that the board can make decisions, review, and whatever the board may do after that. That is the utmost, because going into the second half of this year, it's going to be imperative. So putting that in perspective, yes, by Thursday, we should have an organizational chart sent out to us. That's my request with those duties and with the needs, especially from the perspective financially, what's lacking, plugging someone in randomly. I mean, you could get someone who would decide, I don't need all this help. Then what's the board going to do? Or I can perhaps have a different methodology. I'm not sure. None of us are sure at this time, but we need to understand. But at the same time, I would suggest that we get prepared to do this recruiting effort that we could launch without, as kicking the can down the road was said, that we could have prepared to launch perhaps Thursday or thereafter. Once we understand, we come into that meeting Thursday and understand the roles that are being played and the gaps of the needs that they have. I mean, that's what I'm thinking in terms of, which include the financial package, which is very important if they're going to move forward. Right, wrong, or different, we may never use it, but on the other hand, I'm sure it will be. Back to you, Phil.
So then what I'm hearing then for Thursday, is it possible that we get a report like that, Shelley, that will tell us what everybody's doing in that office, maybe a little presentation or what you guys say are needs or what's going on and whose duties are doing this or doing that? I know this is payroll week also. Right?
It is. Right now, everyone's doing and covering everything they can to make sure we don't drop anything. So that's going to be a difficult presentation. Again, I would encourage the commissioners to come in and spend 10 minutes with us. And that would give you an overview of what's going on. But if you want it in paper, we will do our best.
Well, that's what,
It's difficult because sometimes I do have to say, Erica, I know this isn't part of what you're supposed to be doing, but I need you to do this, or Angie, I need you to do this, because we're just trying to make sure we're not missing anything, and that is not an ideal situation, but it is the best that we can do right now, and we've been trying to do. I'm not exactly sure if that's the long-term goal that you would like to see, Commissioner Cardwell. I don't think that's what you want long-term. It's how are we handling it? I think what you're asking for is, what would it look like laid out potentially, or what is it that you're?
Not at all, if I may interject.
go ahead.
I went through this file cabinet, which is historical, and I just went through emails looking for an organizational chart. I went back to the 2020 and kept searching. Typically, if there's one out there, we would have one. This is one of 24, but it does not specifically go, it goes very broadly. So there's very few organizational charts of the administrator's office. Me going in, each commissioner make their own decision, as we already have, and having a discussion of the needs is not what I need to do. That's what administrators need to do. And what I was looking for was hand out a sheet of paper to you for the 5, 4. What do you do? What's your role? What's your title? And what are you doing? Your chief responsibility, and make it 80% of what you do, not the 20%, but the 20% of something takes up 80% of your time. That's what we're looking for. Make it short, sweet, and yes, it was 4 pages of paper, that's fine. If it's combined, that's even better. When you look back and you can't find an organizational chart, that raises an awareness that, wow, how did we miss that as a board? Especially when we were giving out step-up increases, you know. So it's not where we want to go, it's where we're at today. If there's time to say, you know, here are the needs, each individual puts down their, you know, what are the top needs that they have, the top 5 or whatever, that they believe would be very critical or germane to moving forward, that's great. But understanding the time limit, I think that one thing that is, and I'm putting this, and requesting this on paper, Chairman, for a record of the future. Because we don't have a record of the past, we have a record of the future, but we do have a
Sorry, I couldn't
we do have the control administrator. We've done that job description a lot of times. But that's just, a lot has changed. And I think from what is being asked by the elected that presented today is that the board, you need to understand what you're dealing with right now before you move forward. And maybe that's going to change your job description. Maybe there's an emphasis there. Maybe the acumen of financial isn't as strong as we need, but this is an area that we need it stronger. There are leaders and there are followers. And I think what Commissioner Goodchild keeps using the word leadership from his background, I'm sure. You need a leader, especially that has the ability to, on the finance side, the ability to communicate. We hear that, not at a high level, at a level that everyone can understand, especially the public. at this juncture. We need to make sure that that's there. So I wanted to comment on that in the sense that I didn't want a huge task, but something that the board could have as a record from this day forward, from that day forward, but also is the controller administrator, what aspect of that job description is most critical that we focus on finding an individual? Not the whole thing, which is rare, but this is what we need. And certainly high order is the ability to analyze and present county finances in a way that the elected and especially the board can understand and use for decision making, especially for strategic planning. That's sort of the end in mind. You
So,
stated it very well, Commissioner Duchamp. Good. Back to you.
okay, so that's where we're at right now. So at this point, we're not gonna give any directive to Kelly about getting ready for a search or, we're not gonna make any decisions on firms or whatever at this point that was presented. We will just have this on the next, we'll have this on the agenda for Thursday. Gives us 2 more days to absorb everything that was said here today and, give us a chance to evaluate different things and put it back on for Thursday.
Chairman, could I sort of expound a little bit further on that so we're not kicking the can? By Thursday, I'm suggesting that either the board co-yes on a salary, okay? We could be doing that today for Thursday. A benefit package, anything related to that. And related to how to recruit, I think we've narrowed it down to the leadership, at least as one option, because of the fact of the matter is, I'm not sure the confidence level that you have, other than LinkedIn, what's left to do it, other than the candidates that were listed. You got one that you may approach, but you got to know what you're approaching with. You know what I mean? So if we could have that for Thursday, and the board is not comfortable with setting a salary level at this point, or range, that's fine, but it'll just have to be done on Thursday. Something's got to be done Thursday. And if it's not done today for approval on Thursday or review on Thursday, then if it's do review, then we have to go through all the motions of rediscussion. Back to you.
Okay, so what you would like to see on the agenda for Thursday then is discussion of pay rate, pay benefit package. You'd like to get ready to that on Thursday and make a decision.
I think we should be ready, and I'm just going to propose this. I'm going to propose 134 right out of the blue, make a range, a band above and below that, whatever that may be. I don't know.
Okay,
I sense that that's what leadership group came in with, and that can be changed Thursday. We want to come in with something set in mind in terms of the benefit package, the county benefit package. And unless something else is negotiated along the way, the board would have to approve that. And then if there's any other avenues or resources to use or to consider for recruiting, other than the leadership, whatever, if you come across something like that. But so Thursday we could start in with, here's what we're functioning today. This is the key areas that we need. Control administrator. Does it fit in with job description? Job description should be sent out again. That's right. And then we have a working document that we can decide to go forward or hesitate at that point. Does that make sense?
Does to me.
I mean,
oh, then no.
No, then no, yeah.
okay, back to you.
So that didn't make sense, Commissioner.
He said, it did to me that, then no.
No.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, so with the, and Mr. Gargo, the job description, send that back out. And then as you were referring to benefit package, we actually did that as our, that's definitely have to be rewritten. We worked in the benefits in the agreement for the position. So I can send that out as it is. That's definitely gonna have to be reviewed and looked at, as you indicated, possibly a 3-year contract, because of what happened last time. But that is where we worked in the, you have X amount of days for vacation in advance, those types of things. As far as health insurance benefits, that is what it is. That's not in that agreement. So I can send that back out, knowing that that would definitely need to be, reviewed, updated, locked down a little bit better, those types of things. I think that's what you're referring to, but we did X amount of days of vacation, we did lay that all out there. Evaluation within the first 6 months or whatever was in there. I'll leave that all in there and I'll send it back out to all commissioners and to the clerk, as well as, I'll bring copies in. So at least we have a starting point of maybe where we left off for that.
So,
That makes sense. So they would be placeholders, in other words, in terms of, it sounds like contract language, which it was to some degree. But they'd be placeholders for discussion. The most important thing in my mind is to understand on paper the functions or the things that's being done by each individual now and how they interrelate to achieve the financial objectives that the board has, which is clarity, and where the gap is within that. So I'm not sure if we have Mr. Goodchild, because someone said, I want to make sure we have the right key players with the right experience. And if not, where are the gaps? Because we're probably going to face a financial issue and we don't want to overstaff at the end of the year. Who knows? Maybe we won't.
okay, so are we, any questions on what we'll discuss or what we're asking, or any questions? Okay,
As you indicated, with
Okay.
payroll, we'll try to put it in the best form that we can. And even if it's our current job descriptions,
do the best.
well, but I was going to further on that, and what you're actually doing versus what your job description says, because those need to be updated too. I mean, that is the case. We're picking things up. We're helping each other out, working together as a team to make sure that nothing's being left undone. Just because it's not on my job description doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do it if it needs to be done.
Yeah. This chair, just sort of solidify what we're asking. I really don't want a job description, especially if it's not relevant. And all the peripheral, I want to know that the board needs to know the 20% that takes 80% of your time of activities. That's what they need to know. What are those, take that off the job description, but what are those key activities that takes 80%, at least 80% of your time? And looking across that, what could improve that if fill in the blank? If whatever. In other words, for each individual and how they integrate. Is that possible?
It's a moving target right now. Well, yes, I understand what you're saying. And yes, it's possible, but it does change on a daily basis. Something that you don't expect is always coming up, but I understand.
20% of your time, 80% of your time is 20% of some activities, whether if they're reoccurring that many times each day, well, that's going to be part of that 20%. So we don't have a plethora, a whole list of, this is what I actually, really don't do this. Well, once in a while I do this, but I do this. This is what takes up all my time. And this is, when we look at it from the financial, I'll give you the clue. Myself, I'm going to look for the financial. I'll look at admin. I'm going to look at financial. What's being done on the financial? Whose role is does each individual have? And then if it's not shown by how it's integrated, we'll have to integrate it just from the finance experience. All right, understand this, obviously, but I don't want to make it overcomplicated. I just thought just a quick analysis for page to each individual. What are these key responsibilities, outcomes, and what do you need to be more financially, especially to be to give the board what it needs to make its decision. Now, you can all point to an administrator controller, gonna bring in and solve everything. But if you do that, keep in mind, they probably could if they're good. I mean, they could. So, in other words, depends on the experience of the individual coming in. Neil was a CPA. He could if he would. And that's what upset people because he wasn't involving traditionally how people were being involved. So does that make sense? 80-20.
Excuse me, yes, it does.
We'll see what goes. I hope that's helpful, Chairman. That's just
Okay.
a path of quickness that we use in past businesses.
Then we can move on from here for right now. We can go to, we got finance, technology, building and grounds. Is there anything been here? Anything we need to go over any of that stuff? I don't have anything.
I think on finance technology, it's, yeah, that's.
Mike, you got anything?
The only thing I had was concerns of cyber threats from the other hand situation escalating. My plan is to attack it from professional development and working with the users on the network to be more prepared for scam phishing emails. Because that's the only way that we're going to be effective. Yeah, so just be more focused on that.
But just a comment, Chair, if I may. You would think IRAN would have more complex things to think about now than cyber.
Yeah, you think, if you bob land on your head and wait.
Well,
The
they
chair.
have fun things, and the way that we do that is extorting money, and the way that we do that is by extorting networks and ransomware. So good to create a person for anybody.
Cheers. Go for it.
Okay, nothing under other business necessary. We'll open up for public comment. If anybody wants to make a comment out there. Time.
Ashley Bennett, County Treasurer. I didn't really speak on the decision you guys have in front of you. But I will say that I've spent a lot of time in the front office recently. And I do feel that I feel for Erica, and I feel that you guys should maybe be aware of it from not Erica's point of view. I want you to realize that she's coming into a position where we've essentially had 4 controllers over the past year, and she's trying to put together and complete the audit for the counties, on the county's behalf. I'm not trying to give her an excuse of any sort. However, it's chaos. And a lot of time that she is spending is trying to ensure that what she is reporting to the auditors, she can't necessarily just take the number that was provided in the financial statements or whatever that may be, because she's finding there's a lot of, one of our controllers made an entry that the next controller came in and reversed, that the next controller came in and redid, and it's taking a lot of time. Her and I have worked together doing that, trying to go down an avenue here or there. And oftentimes the end of the day comes and it's time to go home and we still got nowhere. But I just want you to maybe have a little grace, that I understand there's this idea that you hire a chief accountant or you hire a controller administrator, but at the end of the day, they don't know everything. What I will say is that there's conversations that I've had with Erica, and what I absolutely respect is she's not afraid to say, I don't know, but let me find out. So taking ownership of not
pretending you know everything, but the willingness to find out is a huge asset to this county. And I just wanted you guys to be made aware. So that was it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else there on, virtual land there, Mr. Lee?
You didn't raise your hand raised.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's record show that we did have one public comment that was at the, better. And then we'll take a motion to bring the meeting.
Eric, can I say something before you do that? I'd like to reiterate what Ashley said because that's what I seen when I went in there to talk with Erica. It's not just a matter of, oh, this number goes here and that number goes there. That's why it's important to go in there and sit down with her and look what's going on and see what's actually going on, what she's having to deal with a day in and day basis of chasing what's going on in the county. So I thank Erica because she's doing a fantastic job. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. That's it.
Well, then we'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion on the, supported by your speaker. Adjourned.